Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Covington City Council meeting, excuse me, for Tuesday, March 22nd. This City Council meeting is being held telephonically and virtually in compliance with state executive and legislative actions responding to the COVID-19 emergency. Call this meeting to order. And Krista, if you could please call the roll.
Yes. Councilmember Kokel?
Here.
Councilmember Soltis?
Here.
Councilmember Harjahausen?
I am present.
Councilmember Simomo?
Here.
Councilmember Porter?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith?
I'm here as well.
Mayor Wagner?
I am here.
We have a quorum, Your Honor.
Thank you, Krista. If everybody could please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much for that. Next is approval of the agenda. Regan, do we have any changes tonight?
No, Mayor, no changes.
Great, thank you. And look for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Sean and seconded by Joe to approve the agenda. Call for a roll call vote. Jared, how do you vote?
Aye.
Sean, how do you vote?
Aye.
Christina, how do you vote?
Aye.
Jennifer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Joe, how do you vote?
Aye.
Beth, how do you vote?
Aye.
I also vote aye. It is unanimous to approve the agenda. Next up is public communication. And tonight, we have two items on our communication night. First is a proclamation for Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And I don't know if we have anybody here attending to receive this. Did anybody respond, Krista?
Yes, I am promoting Karen Sharp.
Oh, great. Welcome, Karen. Thank you for joining us tonight. I do have a proclamation to read, and then once done, if you'd like to say anything. The proclamation is, whereas in Washington State, 45% of women and 22% of men report having experienced sexual violence in their lifetime. And whereas individual and community impacts of sexual violence are rooted in compounded by racism, sexism, heterosexism, and other forms of oppression, Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, people living in poverty, LGBTQ+ people, elders, people with disabilities, and other people targeted by oppression are disproportionately affected by sexual violence in significant and complex ways. And whereas negative impacts of sexual violence trauma on women, men, children, and youth include fear, concern for safety, symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, injury, and missed work or school. And whereas working together to educate our community about sexual violence, supporting survivors when they come forward, speaking out against harmful attitudes and actions, and engaging in best practice sexual violence prevention work helps end sexual violence. And now, therefore, we, the City Council of the City of Covington, do hereby proclaim April 2022 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month in the City of Covington, and encourage everyone to join with advocates and communities across King County in taking action to prevent sexual violence. And I wish we were in meeting in person so I could personally hand this proclamation to you, but I really appreciate the fact that we do proclaim April to bring this awareness out. Not the fact that we have sexual violence, because I wish that was not around and that we didn't have to do this, but it's with all the sex trafficking and everything that's going on, not just in King County, but worldwide. We've just got to continue to help promote prevention and awareness to help get this to slow down. And Karen, I would like to hand this proclamation to you. We'll make sure that you get a copy. And if there's anything that you'd like to say, you're welcome to say anything.
Thank you, Mayor Wagner, for those very thoughtful words. And thank you for the proclamation and the introduction. My name is Karen Sharp, and I'm the Chief External Relations Officer at King County Sexual Assault Resource Center. We're a nonprofit that serves the city of Covington and all communities throughout King County. And I'm here tonight to accept the proclamation and on behalf of our nonprofit, I want to thank you all for being part of the solution to ending sexual violence. I also want to let you know that KSARC served over 5,000 people in 2021, and that is a 23% increase over the number of people we were serving just about 5 years ago. And almost half of our clients are teens and children. And studies indicate that young people are the most vulnerable to sexual assault. I also wanted to share with you that amid the pandemic, survivors and their families have faced even more complex challenges. For example, as legal cases drag on, our advocates have provided more safety planning, emotional support, and whatever else it takes to help survivors remain engaged in their own cases or their child's therapy or legal cases. The focus of Sexual Assault Awareness Month this year is building safer spaces online. And as more of us went to work online or had meetings such as this, we were learning online and socializing online. Unfortunately, abusive behavior also escalated online in those virtual spaces that inflict real harm, whether that's sharing of images without consent, online harassment and bullying, or Zoom bombing, a term that we have all learned over the last couple of years and more. And young people are particularly vulnerable. And so during this month of awareness, we're encouraging parents and caregivers to have conversations with the young people in their lives about healthy communications and relationships, and to take it seriously if you hear or see that your child is experiencing abuse online. And finally, I'd like to thank you all for your leadership and your willingness to be loud about sexual assault, because, well, we can't change what we don't talk about. And by talking about sexual violence, we are sending an important message to survivors. You are not alone, and your story matters. So thank you all very, very much. Really appreciate this opportunity.
Karen, we really appreciate you coming tonight, but more importantly, we appreciate all the work and advocacy that you and your team at KSARC do. Doesn't go unnoticed, and thank you. And please pass on our thanks to everybody there at KSARC for all the hard work that you're doing.
I will do that. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you, Karen. We'll make sure that you get a copy of this proclamation.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
You too.
Next up is our end of session report with Holly. Welcome.
Hello,
Thank you for a good session. Done without you.
It was. Let me share my screen here really quick. All right. Can everyone see this slide? Great. So good evening. My name is Holly Kochi, state lobbyist for the city. Thank you for providing some time for me to speak today. I will just jump right in as we have a lot to cover. The purpose of this presentation is to share a bit more about what occurred during the 2022 legislative session. I then will dive into the city's legislative agenda, which was developed prior to session. And as you all are aware, the legislative agenda really provides not only myself, but the city's legislative delegation, the direction we need as we advocate on the city's behalf during session. The city also developed a policy document, which essentially serves as a secondary piece to that legislative agenda and provides an outline for policy items or issues that are also of importance, but don't particularly rise to the level of the legislative agenda items that we have been hyper-focused on during session. And lastly, I'll wrap up with some next steps as we prepare for the 2023 legislative session, because I know you all want to already begin thinking about that. So just to provide some context, the legislature operates on a 2-year cycle that aligns with the state's biennial budgets. This year was the second session of the 21-23 biennium, meaning it was the short session of the two, lasting 60 days. It began on January 10th and ended on time on March 10th. Another important element to the 2022 session is that the legislature adopted the redistricting maps that will take effect for the upcoming November elections. And the Democrats continue to hold the majority in both the House and the Senate currently. For a short session, the legislature focuses on adopting supplemental budgets by making amendments or adjustments to the previous budget that passed in 2021. So in addition to passing those budgets, the legislature also considers bills that were carryover from the previous 2021 session, as well as bills that were introduced this year. So a total of 1,051 bills were introduced in 2022, and 309 bills passed into law entirely this session. So with that super quick recap, I will share a bit more about the budgets. There are 3 budgets the legislature focuses on, which are the operating, capital, and transportation budgets. At the city level, you all often integrate the transportation budget and the capital budget into one, but the state keeps these 2 separate. So as I shared in the previous slide, the short session is dedicated to passing supplemental budgets by making amendments to the 21-23 biennial budget. When the legislature comes back in 2023, they will start this 2-year cycle over again for the 23-25 biennial budget. So moving to the first budget, the operating budget, it funds all state agency operations. This is the one you most traditionally hear about in the media. Going into the legislative session, it was apparent based on recent forecasts that the operating budget was continuing to trend upwards, providing an additional $1.4 billion in state revenue that would be accounted for within the 2022 supplemental budget. So overall, the final 21-23 budget appropriates over $63 billion, in which $2 billion is shifted to the transportation budget, which I'll talk a bit more about later, and $650 million to the capital budget. And the legislature left $812 million in reserves. I don't have enough time to go over the numerous investments, but in addition to those on the slide that are more directed to local government specific investments, the budget primarily allocates new funding for K-12 education, long-term care, and developmental disability programs, behavioral health, paid family leave insurance, higher education, and housing. So moving on to the capital budget, this budget funds public and nonprofit construction projects, excluding transportation. This is the budget that the city often seeks funding within, and structurally, it is funded by bonds that derive from the portion of the operating budget. So last session, the legislature kept about 81 million of bond authorization for this year's supplemental budget, which the legislature further adjusted this year, providing a total of 107 million in bond capacity for this year. So I'll just note that there were significant investments made during the 2022 capital budget, which was the largest capital budget we've seen. And Covington directly benefited from that last capital budget by receiving the 1.3 million that'll go towards SoCo Park. So that was great news. In addition to that bond capacity of 107 million, the budget includes funding from the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and the federal ARPA funds, along with a few other sources totaling in 1.5 billion authorized within the supplemental budget. And to put that in perspective, the previous 2020 supplemental budget was a total of 89 million. So still a smaller budget given it's a supplemental budget year, but larger in comparison to previous supplemental budgets. The third budget is the transportation budget, which is by far the most financially challenged of the three. The major components to this revenue shortfall really derive from the decline in gas tax revenue collections and toll revenue collections that we really saw hit during the COVID-19 pandemic. To add further financial obligation to the budget as well, the state has been mandated by a Supreme Court order to replace all state-owned culverts. So there already has been a lot of motivation to create an investment package because the current revenue streams for the budgets are not enough to make any further investments. So for example, the city has been advocating for Highway 18 and State Route 516 projects for the past few years, knowing that an investment package would need to be developed in order for these projects to be considered and possibly receive state funding. And it was announced at the end of 2021 that Transportation Chair Steve Hobbs in the Senate would be filling the role as Secretary of State, which placed Senator Marco Elias as the new State Transportation Committee Chair. So both him and Chair Fye, who's the chair of the House Transportation Committee, worked together to pass a transportation investment package this year in addition to the supplemental budget. And that package is called Move Ahead Washington, which is a $17 billion investment over the next 16 years. So much of this comes from one-time operating budget support, a diversion from the Public Works Assistance Account, Climate Commitment Act dollars that they passed last session to generate revenue and increase carbon reduction efforts. And I would just note that roughly 2/3 of the investment package revenue stems from the Carbon Commitment Act dollars, which is assigned to programs and projects that contribute to that carbon reduction effort. And the remaining 2/3 of investment are dedicated to maintenance and preservation, various mega highway projects, addressing the state's fish culvert obligation, and backfilling some shortfalls that were identified in the Connecting Washington package that passed in 2015. So a lot to unpack here, but that is the quick rundown of the budgets that passed this session. Now, for the city's legislative priorities, several of our priorities this year were funding requests. The first three you see on the slide under transportation heavily relied on the passage of an investment package to even be considered. For our capital budget request, we anticipated prior to session that it would be in our best interest to try and fit within the scope of investments that were likely to be made given the federal funding dollars that are required to be spent on certain projects such as water infrastructure. So given that, we pursued funding for the Pipe Lake Water Quality Project. The remaining two priorities on the city's legislative agenda were policy items, one being the request to clarify law enforcement reforms that were passed during the 2021 session, and the other to maintain local control, particularly around land use decision-making. So with that recap, I'll go over the city's top 5 priorities and the work we did to elevate each one during the session. So the first being the city's transportation priority to widen State Route 516 from 185th to 212th. As you are all aware, the city received funding in the previous revenue package, so the Connecting Washington package, to widen a portion of State Route 516 from Jenkins Creek to 185th. And this ask that we included in our legislative agenda this year was to finish out the widening of this final stretch of the highway within Covington. And that total of the project cost would be $30.8 million. However, midway into session, the city received news that the cost to construct the State Route 516 Jenkins Creek to 185th project, so the project we received funding for in the Connecting Washington package, was well over the amount the state had allocated in the budget. So we quickly switched gears to focus back on this project and worked with the city's 47th legislative delegation to identify funding within the new Move Ahead Washington package to cover a significant amount of that funding shortfall. And all in all, we were able to secure an additional $5 million for the project, which means the project does not run the risk of being delayed, which would have only made the project more costly as labor and materials continue to increase. So this was a huge win for the city. We did not receive funding for the other remaining stretch of 516 that we have been advocating for over the last couple of sessions. But I would just note there were very little earmarked projects included in this Move Ahead Washington package. However, the package did prioritize Highway 18 as a mega project investment. The city has been a part of the Southeast Area Legislative Transportation Coalition, or CLTC, urging the legislature to fund the widening and safety components of Highway 18 from Issaquah Hobart Road to Deep Creek. And the project received funding in the past to get it to construction ready status. And in the meantime, the city and CLTC continued to advocate for construction funding, which WashDOT identified to be $640 million. So the package includes full funding for this project, which is another major win for the city, for the region, as well as the entire state. So this is great news. The city also prioritized requesting that the legislature make further investments in local authorization to increase funding for maintenance and preservation of local roads. The package provides both elements by authorizing transportation benefit districts to impose a 1/10 of 1% sales tax councilmanically and 2/10 with voter approval. And an additional $80 million has been directed to both the Transportation Improvement Board and the Freight Mobility Strategic Investment Board through their grant programs that provide assistance to local governments for their local roadways. And then our capital budget request this session was for $310,000 to complete the construction of the last storm water outfall to Pipe Lake. Initially, the project was included in the Senate version of the capital budget, but not in the House version. We worked with our delegation as final negotiations between the two chambers began, and we were able to lock in the Pipe Lake project within the final capital budget. So great news there. And as I mentioned previously, we also work on issues that come up during session and require our attention, and also work on legislation related to the city's policy document. The first two items that are listed here were included in the city's legislative agenda, but in an effort to just consolidate slides, I've listed them along with a few other policy issues we worked on this session and that I thought to highlight. The legislature enacted over a dozen bills reforming policing during the 2021 legislative session. And over the legislative interim, it became evident that there were several unintended consequences stemming from the slate of police reform bills. So the legislature approved 3 bills making further clarification on: one, the use of beanbags, rubber bullets, and other non-penetrative munitions that can be used as de-escalation tactics, clarifying the scenarios in which an officer may use physical force to carry out specific tasks, and defining physical force and when it can be used. And I'll just note that all 3 of these reforms have been signed by the governor and take effect immediately. The next is to honor local control, which was challenged in many ways this session, especially around land use. However, none of that legislation we shared concern with or actively opposed passed. This was a major defensive success for the 2022 session. They did make some adjustments to the Open Public Meetings Act that will allow for public agencies that have held some of their public meetings virtually prior to March 2020, which they may continue to do so. There were a few amendments made to the Growth Management Act, and although they fully funded the state's culvert obligation, there has yet to be further investments to support local culverts. They increased cannabis revenue distribution to local governments, which will be based upon the jurisdiction's cannabis revenue collections. There is a lot to cover in this in my short presentation, so I'll just note all of these items will also be included in the comprehensive end of session report that I typically share with each of you once the governor has completed bill signings, which he should, I believe, that should end by April 2nd. So to be respectful of your time this evening, I didn't expand on every single item listed here, and there's definitely more to share, but please do reach out with any questions you may have, especially following the final report as well. So in closing, lobbying is a year-round effort. The accomplishments we've really made thus far have required preparation and advocacy throughout the interim. We have seen time and time again how effective it is to do so, and it is greatly appreciated to have you all just highly engaged throughout the year and especially during session. So a few next steps as we move forward and prepare for the 2023 session. I would encourage you, if you haven't already done so, to thank the legislative delegation for their hard work. I know the city typically invites the delegation to a council meeting to share appreciation and give them little Covington gifts, which I always love to see. So that's always a great way of honoring the three of them. And as part of our preparation, we work with the city to develop an interim action plan and next steps to continue to elevate top priorities and really prepare for the 2023 legislative session. Unique to this year, which I've shared, the redistricting maps will apply to the upcoming November elections. The 2023 session will begin on January 9th and will be the first year of the new biennium. And to prepare for that, we will need to update the city's legislative agenda, since some were certainly accomplished, and we can now move on to other priorities, which is great. So with that, I will just say it is an absolute honor to advocate for the city. It's exciting to go through all of the accomplishments Covington has made thus far and continues to tackle each year. So thank you for the opportunity to represent the city. It's really such a privilege to be a part of the team. I'm happy to take any questions, or if you think of any at a later time, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. So thank you.
Does the council have any questions for Holly? Sean.
Good evening, Holly. Thanks. That was great. I'm glad to hear and see that we had such a successful legislative session. So I understand the governor will sign the transportation bill on Friday. Is that
yes, Friday.
And then how soon after that will Covington see the funding we have been allocated?
So it's dependent on the project.
Okay.
And so I would say for State Route 516, that bulk of funding should be coming as it is within the supplemental budget. So it should be coming within that, by the time July 1 hits, because that's when the end of this this time frame ends.
Right.
And then it'll have the 23-25 time frame, and that's where the remaining of that 516 funding we had left for construction was allocated. So that $5 million extra that we received this session will tack on to that 23-25 allocation, if that makes sense.
Yep.
For Highway 18, they did not state exactly when they would begin distributing the funds for construction. That's still something that we're working with WashDOT to clarify. And we'll definitely touch base with you all when we find out a little bit more information on when they're actually going to start that project.
Great. And then I had one other question. You mentioned the new district maps. Are those available somewhere? And will we be voting in our new districts in November? I think the answer is yes, but is that?
Yes. So
Okay.
Yes to both of your questions. The redistricting maps are available on, if you just type in Washington State 2022 redistricting, it should pop up their official website. Mm-hmm. And that has what the legislature approved this session. Okay. And pretty comprehensive maps. And they're pretty easy to check out. But I'm happy to send you the link if you need.
Okay. Yeah.
And your second question.
Well, that was basically that. Are we going to vote in November in those? And then I guess I'll add a third. Does it change the 47th much?
It doesn't change the 47th much. Okay. And, but yes, it does apply to the upcoming November elections.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Sean. Anybody else? Holly, I just want to say thank you to you, Brianna, and your entire team for all the hard work that you do for Covington. I mean, it's amazing, and it's a privilege to work with you and your team to help push Covington forward and keep us in the forefront of everybody. So thank you for that.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Holly, and have a great evening. Thanks for coming tonight. All right, that concludes public communication. Next up is our first of two public comment periods. Speakers will state their name, address, and organization. Comments are directed to the City Council, not the audience or staff. Comments are not intended for conversation or debate and are limited to no more than 4 minutes per speaker. This is the time that you can address the council for anything that's on the agenda or for any other item, and just make sure that you limit it to no more than 4 minutes. And looking at the audience, please raise your hand. First up is Alexander Cabello. Welcome. You are on mute.
Mute.
Yep, you went back on mute. You were just, there you go.
Hi, my name is Alexander Cabello. I live in 256 158 Place Southeast in Covington, and I'm a senior in Kenwood High School. So my comment is about safety. I'm concerned about the safety of students walking home from schools. I'm hoping there are patrols in the area that are available in case of any emergencies or issues like threats to student safeties. That'll be it.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming. We'll make sure and get that over to our acting chief, Adam Easterbrook, on that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Heather Bodden. Did I pronounce that right, Heather? Welcome. And you are on mute.
Am I unmuted?
Yep, we can hear you now, Heather. Welcome.
Excellent, thank you. So I actually am not a resident of Covington, but I do work there and spend more of my waking hours in Covington than I do at home. I am a nurse, and where I work from, I have a direct view of the flag, and my request today is that the flag be at half mast. I don't know how familiar you all are to the situation when Sheriff Deputy Dom Collada was shot on the 15th of March. He, in addition to being a close friend, is somebody who's very valuable and very important to the community. He was on a SWAT call and taking in a violent offender, and his partner was shot. And when he went to step in front of his partner to cover him from fire, he was shot. And he also served in the military for 8 years in the Army and supported Special Forces unit. He is just someone who's very valuable, and he was a close friend of mine. And the fact that all the federal buildings in Seattle have their flag at half-mast, and also in addition to that, even cities as far as Spokane County have their flag at half-mast. I just feel like it's a sign of respect that's owed not only to the deputy, but also to everybody who cared about him and supported him. And I was asked questions by Regan about whether we lived in Covington, and no, we don't, but he served Pierce County and North Pierce County and worked there. And just the fact that we all need to be united right now in all the violent crime that's going on. It's not about what county that you live in and where the incident happened. It's about supporting our law enforcement. Also, my husband is a police officer and a veteran, and I just feel like we need to show them that we care, because they're the only thing that's standing between us and these violent, reckless individuals is the police, and they need to know that we care about them. And I feel like that's a small gesture that means a lot to show respect for his sacrifice. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. And I know we can discuss this during our council comments at the end to bring this up.
Okay.
I think, Mayor, if you want to, you can discuss it now or at the end, whatever you prefer.
Okay. So I believe our current policy is that we follow what the governor instructs us to do as far as when flags are to be at half-mast. And Regan, correct me if I'm wrong, but we as a council can choose to lower the flags at half-mast. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yep.
Okay. So would council like to have the flag lowered at half-mast for the deputy? Just Sean?
Yeah, just a quick question. First I'll just say, yeah, I support that. I'm just wondering, normally it would be following Washington State. And so how long would we lower the flag to have half-mast? It would be the rest of the week. So just wondering what that would be.
Yeah, Heather and I spoke, and I believe it's until this Friday when the deputy is buried.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
All right, can we get a thumbs up for doing that? Okay, so we have council consensus to go ahead and lower the flags at half-mast.
Okay, we'll get it done. Thank you.
Thanks, Regan. And Heather, thank you very much for coming tonight and discussing that. Did you have another question, Heather?
No, I'm sorry, just raised my hand to answer the response that it would remain at half-mast until he's buried on Friday.
Okay. Thank you very much. And sorry for the loss of your friend, and sorry for the loss of any officer in the line of duty. That's just very heartbreaking, and our condolences.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight, Heather.
Thanks. Good night.
Is there anybody else in the audience wishing to address council at this time? All right, seeing nobody else, we will have a second opportunity for public. Mark?
My apologies, Mayor Wagner. you mentioned that there was council consensus, but Councilmember Kokel was not shown on video. And I just want to make sure that the record's clear and that how Councilmember Kokel feels about this issue.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I absolutely will always support something like this.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We'll move into approval of the consent agenda, items C1 through C6. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Joe and seconded by Jared to approve the consent agenda. Call for a roll call vote. Jared, how do you vote?
Aye.
Sean, how do you vote?
Aye.
Christina, how do you vote?
Aye.
Jennifer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Joe, how do you vote?
Aye.
Beth, how do you vote?
Aye.
I also vote aye. It is unanimous to approve the consent agenda items C1 through C6. Next up is reports of commission. And we will start with arts. Marita, welcome. There you are. Welcome, Marita.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Boy, it was tough to follow Heather, but I appreciate the council's support in her request. But I have a few things to get through, so I'll get going. Marita Benedict with the Arts Commission, and we had Laura Morrissey, the chair of the Parks and Rec Commission, join our meeting last month, or this month actually, and that just helps us continue our efforts to have the Arts Commission partner and align with our other fellow commissions. So we have a couple more to invite, but it was great to have her and introduce all of our fellow commissioners. We also talked about the Covington Makers Market, which is being put on by the Chamber on April 23rd. And I think I reported last time that Justin Van Lanschut of Covington Place was kind enough to sponsor the Arts Commission, have a booth there. So we are working on plans to have the booth there and who's going to man it and what kind of activity or giveaway might we have to help support that event and get the exposure out there for the Arts Commission. We're also continuing to work with Justin on vinyl wraps. It went from one utility box, they're actually the PSE boxes on his property, to 3. So we found the contact at PSE and we have all of the specs and know what to do. And so we're moving forward with that and helping Justin get those 3 boxes wrapped that he will be financing. So it's a great partnership so far. We're excited to be moving forward on that. And then our 2022 work plan, which I also think I've mentioned before, it's going to kind of mimic the template that Parks has. It's almost complete. Patty's working on that and she'll be sending it out to the rest of us commissioners for review here shortly. We're also working on selecting a date for our commission retreat to work on planning for the next year. We're hoping that'll take place in April. And then Jenny was able to report out to us on her plans for the 2022 Performing Arts Summer Programming. So that's exciting because it was such a success last year. We're excited that it's happening again this year. And then Pat was also able to catch us up on the fact that movies and concerts and Kids Fest and Covington Days are all coming back. So it's all amazing news. We're finally coming back to a sense of normalcy. So very, very exciting. And then I think the thing that was most exciting to me was that we were presented with a grant opportunity to partner with CEDIS on a grant that Carla was working on through the Port of Seattle. And in a partnership with CEDIS, we could offer grants to local businesses who install artwork at their locations. And the reason that makes me so excited is because it goes back to strategies that I've mentioned earlier in previous presentations, that if we can install art throughout the community, we can actually, Carla offered to make a map and we can invite people from outside the community, and we can call it tourism, but also on a smaller scale, just people outside in neighboring cities in Kent and Auburn to come into Covington and get this map and come take a look at all of our art and hopefully spend their money within our city limits. So it's an exciting evolution of the partnership that we could have with the Economic Development Commission and our local business community. And then next month, I believe we have Ethan Newton on the slate to come join our meeting, and he's going to give us some updates on our utility box wrap effort, as well as our rotating art. And then we'll also be talking about skate park maintenance and continue to talk about that economic development grant opportunity in our next meeting. And that's it for me, unless you have questions.
Thank you very much, Marita. Does anybody have any questions? Sean?
Yeah, just real quick. I appreciate that about the utility box wraps. I've noticed a couple of utility boxes on, I guess, in developments that aren't run by the city are getting tagged. And I'm just wondering if that's something we can think about in the future, is doing something to make it more difficult to tag those, but also maybe beautify those as well. I'm not sure what the about using city funds to improve a private facility, but anyway, I've just noticed that I'm seeing some tagging going on, and it'd be nice
Unwrapped unwrapped boxes?
No, it's a private utility box. I'm not going to call it out here, but
is it wrapped?
No, it's not. We haven't wrapped it. No.
Okay. So yes, when you wrap the boxes, they use materials that are anti-graffiti material.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an important piece of, spending the money to do something like that. So any box that we do wrap, that we have the funds to wrap, will be done in the anti-graffiti material, which would help with that. Now, that being said, I know that the boxes that Justin is wrapping on his property, he's identified the one in front of City Hall, the one in front of AT&T, and the one in front of Indigo. He is part of, he attended a workshop, and I hope I'm not misspeaking on your behalf, Justin, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but he attended a workshop recently that also stated that hand painting is a deterrent. I mean, it's not a physical deterrent, like somebody can spray paint it. It's like a psychological deterrent. That it's sort of that same viewpoint that when you start putting art into places, there is less crime and less graffiti. Which I know Justin already felt strongly about, but then he attended a workshop, and there were some stats that corroborated that theory. So we did look into, I asked PSC if it was possible to do regular painting, and it's not possible with their policy. They need it to be wrapped. But that's just some interesting additional context, I think, that there are statistics out there that say that art in general, but also proper painting on a box helps deter graffiti and crime. That being said, then when we go through the proper vinyl wrapping process, all of that should be graffiti proof, or like at least you can remove the graffiti.
Great, thank you.
Jennifer.
Hello, I was curious if the student art showcase is not happening anymore, if it's paused, if it was just too much work, just what's going on with that.
Yeah, so we actually took stock and did, I'm going to use a business term, ROI analysis on our efforts and time spent. And, just because we've always done something before, do we have to keep doing it again? And what is the return on the effort that's spent? And we kind of decided that, that particular effort has a lot of time and energy and manpower hours that go into it. And we know that it has that economic tie with the businesses, but we thought that we had identified different ways of partnering with the business community to be even more effective. Something that we'd like to look at in the future are, art walks and things of that nature, where I'm sure you guys have all attended some sort of art walk and it's usually an event in the evening where businesses are open and there are artists or makers who are in the businesses, and there's usually wine served and things of that nature. We thought about, kind of evolving towards something like that. And then also the partnership with CEDIS, where how can we, the grant program opportunity that I just mentioned. So understanding that tie to business and economic development is a high priority, a number one priority. How can we make that effort even more effective? And so, yes, we did decide to go away from the art show.
It makes total sense. I mean, having participated so much work, I cannot tell you how many hours I personally spent on that. And I'm a huge proponent of taking stock and doing a return on investment look. So I really appreciate that, because honestly, it was the most time consuming thing. And I feel like it really does take away from other projects that you guys could be focused on. And the projects that you're focused on should be representative of the current commission. So awesome. I was just curious the status. Thank you.
Thank you for asking. And it was also, a lot of hours for city staff. And so we need to,
absolutely.
We also need to make sure that we are utilizing the support that we have in city staff in the most judicious manner. And we felt at that time that that wasn't it.
Yeah, totally get it. Thank you.
All right, Marita, thank you so much for a great update. And again, pass our thanks on to everybody on the Arts Commission for all the great work that you do.
I will. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming tonight. Have a great evening.
You too.
We don't have anybody here from CEDIS tonight. Equity, cultural, and social justice. I don't see anybody. Human Services, Debbie Jacobson. Welcome. You're on mute, Debbie. Welcome.
There we go. I'm looking. Oh, there I am. Okay. Sorry, I was trying to get my computer set up correctly here for me. So this month was actually an interesting meeting. We had the Congolese Integration Network come and present to us. This is a group I spoke to you about last report that we were having come and speak to the commission because they had asked for more money and were rather assertive about how they asked it of Julie. And it's not a program we typically would fund, but we gave them, we did give them some money at the last round. And we're a little bit surprised by the aggressiveness of that request from this gentleman. And he was the equivalent of a director for them. And so we thought, well, let's find out, give them the benefit of the doubt and have them come and speak to us and find out what their story is, talk more about their program and what created the conversation. And it was actually a very nice visit. It was very professional, took the visit very seriously. Essentially what it came down to is what some of our concern might have been. It was just cultural differences in communication styles and stuff, and is also kind of a plea for assistance and for help. And he was equivocating it similar to what's happening in the Ukraine, that the Congolese are also coming in desperate scenarios, and it's been going on for years, and the needs are just so high they can't serve everybody. And they didn't anticipate, they've been working under really difficult conditions like all the other health systems that we have been supporting, and didn't anticipate that COVID was going to last as long as it did. And they just don't have all the funding resources. There are some concerns about the program, but the visit itself was very nice. We have more context to what their concerns are to base decisions on. So I'm really glad we made the choice to have him come visit with us. They have held a couple of some kind of group sessions here in Covington. We're going to get some more details on that and where and which residents they were able to help, where they're finding these folks. I would love to know if they held 2 group events, how did they find them? You know, are they in Polaris or the other complexes in housing, single family housing, you know, and how did they reach them? So we had some follow-up questions for them we're going to get asked. We also said goodbye to Don Allen, who's been serving on the commission for almost 5 years. And that was a hard one. We've all worked so closely together and we've done a lot of things here. And it was hard to lose her, but it was just time for her with her lifestyle, her life and stuff and where she's heading. So anyway, what we did is we all met as a group and discussed how we're going to recruit new positions. We have a couple open, including a youth position that we'd really love to fill because our youth commissioners have been just outstanding contributions. And so we're going to do a recruitment video, a little 2 to 3 minute video where we all take a part and talk about the commission and what we do in just real terms and our role in the community and for the city as stewards of the financial end of human resources, human services, and then how they can apply and who we're looking for. Because there's some things that we're trying to do, and that's improve on the diversity of our group and to continue to expand on that. And we just have I think a really sound message for that. And we would like to find different ways to get that out for recruitment. So we thought it'd be a good litmus test to try to see how it goes. And so other groups, on the different commissions could potentially do something similarly. And so we're looking forward to it. Then we just looked over fourth quarter reports to see how the different organizations are doing that we have funded. So any questions on any of those?
Council have any questions for Debbie? Debbie, thank you very much. And thanks for delving into that organization. Really appreciate that. Doing the due diligence for all of us. And please pass on our thanks to each of the commissioners. And it's sad that Dawn's leaving. 5 years that's admirable that she was there. I know you've been on there a long time, and so thank you. Yeah. And everybody on the commission. So thank you very much.
Of course. Thank you.
Have a great evening, Debbie.
You as well. Thank you. Take care.
Next up is Parks and Rec. Laura Morrissey, welcome.
Hi there. Okay, can you guys hear me? Okay, perfect. I feel like I need to give a disclaimer for things that you may have heard in my house in the past. Yes, we do have birds. My daughter has a rescue bird who has been with us since he was a nestling. And so we are his flock. He feels entitled to be a part of all conversations that happen in this house. And so if you hear like squawking and weirdness in the background, it's the bird. I just tune him out. I don't hear him anymore. And I forget that other people do. So we have the living room dark and quiet to hopefully convince him to go to bed. So with that out of the way, Parks Commission meeting. We met last week. We had a pretty bulky agenda. We looked at the pros plan, which you will get later in your not tonight's meeting, but sometime coming up soon. So we got the last kind of bit of information, not the final put together plan, but basically the bulk of it. We passed a motion as the Parks Commission recommending that you guys approve it in substantial form. It's really well done. We got to look at the numbers, and the numbers were fascinating and exciting and a little bit scary. Fascinating just because it's great to have raw data behind all of the things that we would like to do and to have that quantified. It's exciting to see that it is feasible to do many of the things that we want to do. It is scary because those are really big numbers to do the things that we want to do. So anyway, like I said, you will be getting that information yourself, and hopefully you will find it interesting as well. We also looked at proposed park property acquisitions, the 2 parcels next to our established SoCo Park that have come up for sale. So that will be coming to you also sometime in the near future. We also passed a unanimous motion as the Parks Commission recommending that you guys approve the purchase of those parcels. And sorry, there's like animals everywhere in here tonight. And yes, I totally lost my train of thought there. Anyway, anytime we can get land, we recommend getting land, because once that land is paved over and becomes a parking lot or something else, it's never going to become a park. We took a look at the Parks and Recreation Department performance report, just kind of jumping through some things that Ethan highlighted for us. Even during COVID and coming out of COVID, the Parks Department continues to be busy. Demand for recreation, for outdoor spaces, and even for indoor spaces to a certain degree, like the pool and the aquatic center, continues to be quite high as we come out of COVID. We took a look at the action plan. So what the Parks Department is planning to do in this upcoming year. We took a look at the commission work plan. So we haven't really touched it much because COVID has been going on. And so there are things that we will need to update. And so we just started that process. And the last thing we did was we took a look at the tree board work plan and gave unanimous approval to that work plan, which is necessary to fulfill Arbor Day requirements. Oh my gosh. Okay. So in our next meeting, we will do updates on parks projects. We're going to plan for a park tour, which we really hope we can have, but we are restricted somewhat with requirements with the Open Public Meetings Act and having some type of virtual connection ability, and you can't do that when you're out touring parks. So hopefully things will be fine. So this was definitely not one of my more polished reports.
I think that cat wants a cat park. Keeps hearing about all these dog parks. So
no, he's like not leaving me alone.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's real life here, people. That's just kind of what you get. So anyway, any questions about parks?
Don't have any questions for Laura? I don't see anybody, but Laura, thank you very much for a great report. And please pass on to everybody in your commission. Thank you for all the hard work you're doing.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you, Laura. Next up is Planning Commission. Jonathan Ingram, welcome. I take it you're giving the update tonight?
There's no report from Planning Commission this evening.
Oh,
they did not meet this month.
All right. Thank you, Krista. All right, and then we had our joint meeting with the Youth Council earlier, so we have no other update tonight. And with that, we will move into new business, discuss the new Aquatic Recreation Center. Ethan.
Yeah, good evening, City Council and Mayor. This agenda item is for the City Council to discuss on the topic of a new Aquatic and Recreation Center. As you are aware, the cities of Covington, in partnership with the City of Maple Valley, completed a feasibility study in 2021. And following that feasibility study, the cities decided to form a working group to build consensus between the two cities and start on working towards next steps to support a new aquatic and recreation center. That working group comprises of 2 city council members from each city, as well as staff from the cities. I'll give a brief recap of kind of the situation with the current aquatic center and indoor needs for indoor recreation spaces, and also give a brief recap on the feasibility study, and then I can present some questions that came out of that working group meeting, the initial meeting. So to recap on the situation with the current aquatic center, and this is, I realize everybody's probably heard this before, but it'll be just a good summary or refresher, I think, maybe. The existing facility is likely at the end of its useful life. Breakdowns, repairs, and replacement of building equipment and systems are a regular occurrence, and the risk of failure of equipment or systems increases as time goes on. Some of those could shut down the facility for months and cost significant funds to replace. So in recognizing this, in 2018, the city completed a facility condition assessment And in the process, the staff learned that the cost to renovate the facility exceeds its value, and the roof construction does not meet current building code for seismic activity. Although remedial action is not required, it is noted as a deficiency. And then the existing aquatic facility just doesn't meet the current demand. It was built really to meet the demand of the population in the area in the 70s and 80s, and obviously the population in Covington and the service area has grown. So in 2021, we were able to complete a feasibility study. It actually took place over the years of 2020 and 2021. The study was supported with a consultant team led by an architectural and engineering firm, ALSC, with a full range of subs to assist in the study. It was supported with a core planning group with staff representatives from both Covington and Maple Valley. And it also was supported with a 15-person volunteer community member steering committee. There was a component of outreach and info gathering, including a situational survey and interviews, a telephone survey and public workshops. And a project site analysis was completed that looked at the entire service area, including 14 potential sites. The 3 most promising sites were evaluated against site analysis criteria to determine the most suitable site. The result of the study's final recommendation was the town center site in Covington. The feasibility study developed a building program, and actually they developed 2 different building programs, 2 different options. The first option was an 85,000 square foot facility with an estimated cost of $114 million, and those are in 2026 dollars. And then option 2 was a 60,000 square foot facility with a building cost of $76 million in 2026 dollars. Along with both of those building program options, they did a funding analysis, not just for capital improvements, but also for operating, and included a business plan for both options. So for the option 1, for the 85,000 square foot facility, it would require an annual subsidy of $759,000. And for option 2, or the 60,000 square foot facility, it would require an annual subsidy of $782,000 subsidy, which is 80% cost recovery. And the first option would have been an 84% cost recovery, both of which are very good. The consultant team also provided a basic benefit and economic impact analysis as part of their report. And then really the result or the outcome of the feasibility study is that it is feasible. There is a path forward that does lead to a new aquatic and recreation center for the community, but it would require community support and leaders in the community to champion the benefits to make that investment. I'll do a quick summary of the recommendations that came out of the feasibility study, and I'll just kind of list these. They recommended establishing a community advocacy group. They recommended completing a geocoded survey, which is a survey that can also kind of test the results according to the areas of the community, to test the viability of a metropolitan park district that would fund the project. They recommended a capital campaign plan. They recommended establishing a 501c3 foundation to help with collecting funds and increase the range of grant opportunities. They recommended determining a final site location. This is important to define the project. It also informs the geocoded survey. It would inform the funding and scope, and it would be important to allow pre-construction design work to proceed. The report recommended continuing to engage with the community and continue to develop relationships with potential partners. It recommended establishing a metropolitan park district, which would be a voted on measure. And it recommended proceeding with pre-construction design. And I'll make a note that the feasibility study was made possible with a state grant of just over $1 million. And that not just funded feasibility, but also to start on pre-construction design. So there's a component of future work that's still funded. So with that, I'll give a little bit of a presentation or speak about what came out of the working group meeting. And really there was some good discussion that happened at that meeting amongst the group, but there were some 3 questions that they wanted to bring to the councils at large to get more information or to learn whether the council supported things or not. So the first is a decision on location will be a necessary step. And the question is the city council supportive of what will be determined to be the best location for the entire service area? That would include both Covington and Maple Valley, regardless of it being located in one city or the other. And the result of not being open to locating the facility in either city risks the partnership for this project ending. So then the second question was, a professional siting analysis was completed as part of the feasibility study with representation from both Covington and Maple Valley providing input and oversight. If both cities are open to siting the facility in the best location, regardless of it being in one city or the other, is the council supportive of the site recommended in the feasibility study? And if not, what additional information would be helpful to consider? And the third question that came out of that working group meeting was, the feasibility of a new aquatic and recreation center will require significant funding to make a reality. The feasibility outlines a multi-pronged approach to assemble funding, with the most significant being the formation of a metropolitan park district, also known as an MPD. This special taxing district would serve to provide the funding needed to build and operate the facility. A number of tasks would need to be completed prior to the formation of an MPD, including a ballot measure. But to start planning these tasks, it is necessary to know if the council is supportive of working towards an MPD to fund a new aquatic and recreation center. And so is the council supportive of working towards that? And if not, then it's potentially the partnership for this project will end. So a lot of information, a few questions for the council to consider. And at this point, I think I'll just turn it over to the council for their discussion, but happy to answer any questions.
So I think let's go with questions, and then we can discuss the questions at hand for us to answer. Does that work for you, Ethan?
Yes.
Okay. Sean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ethan. So a couple questions. You mentioned roughly, depending upon which what size of the aquatic center we pick, it's going to be about $850,000 annually from the taxpayers. Is that Covington's contribution, or is that split between both cities?
So yeah, the numbers were about 760 to 790,000 of annual subsidy, and that would be for the service area.
Okay, for the service area. Okay.
So it kind of depends on where those boundaries get drawn. If a larger service area gets drawn, it would be spread about amongst a larger number of people.
Okay. And how you said that's annually for how long? 20 years, 25 years? Or is that indefinitely?
I think that's the operating subsidy. So that's indefinite.
So, okay. All right. Well, then I was going to ask, have we heard from Maple Valley about, how are they feeling about it being potentially sited in Town Center, Covington?
They haven't met and discussed this at the council level yet. So I can't report on that yet.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Jennifer. Oh, Regan.
I just wanted to add on to Sean's question. Ethan, when he put this blue sheet together, he sent the same information to Maple Valley. So they'd be presented with the same information that Covington's being presented with, so that they can make a decision. I believe it's on their next council meeting. I believe
so. It might be next week, maybe.
So my question regarding MPD. So folks, if they choose, who are in the service area would be taxed to pay for it. But the city that would run it would get the funds to pay for running it. Is that how, so if it sits in Covington, then all of the money comes to Covington, and Covington manages staffing and costs. And I know MPD would have its own separate governing board. And so that city would be, interested with, that communication and whatnot. I mean, what are those types of details? Have they been discussed?
No, I think that's a discussion further down the line. But certainly those are questions that are out there that would need to be answered as this gets further defined.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Ethan? Okay, then the first question at hand is a decision on location. Is council supportive of what would be determined to be the best location for the entire service area, regardless of it being located in one city or the other? Beth.
I'm sorry, I was going to just ask another question before we went on with that. There was also, as I understand it, some questions that were brought up, not just, it kind of relates to the location, right? Would it matter if it was in one city or the other? That we may need to reevaluate, particularly if it's not going to break ground for 3 more years, for example. Would the numbers and the data that were used in the original feasibility study still be applicable for pricing and location? So I felt like there was some hesitation at this point from Maple Valley as they were, and there was a bit of a consensus to see if what the data that we had would be enough for that. And I think, is that what we're looking at for decision 1, or for question 1? If another reevaluation of certain parts of that location study were reevaluated and the results came out differently, would we be okay supporting that? Right? Is that,
I'll take a stab at trying to offer a little bit of clarification on that, because I think I'm following what you're saying and remember what the discussion was. And I think there's two different things to address. One is, I think there were some questions and comments about the finances and, do the numbers hold for, 6 years, projecting 6 years in the future. And there are assumptions made, obviously, in the feasibility study. And so I think we just have to be aware of those. I think the feasibility study really answers the question of whether it's feasible, but you don't want to necessarily hold all the detailed information within it as holding true 6 years down the road, because things will change and nobody knows. But I think they're not going to change so drastically that it wouldn't be feasible, or they wouldn't have reported some risk in that. And that wasn't the conclusion of the feasibility study. And then separately on the discussion around location, I think there is acknowledgement that, again, this feasibility study is done at kind of a moment in time, and things could change in the future. And I think, at least I tried to capture that in number 2 of saying, if people are open to locating it wherever in the service area, are they okay with what is recommended in the feasibility study? Or if not, what other information would they want to consider? So that opens up what are the other variables that we didn't consider in the feasibility study as part of the siting criteria. So I guess that would be a question. What other information do people need to consider to evaluate different sites?
Okay, thank you.
Christina.
Ethan, and maybe you can clarify on this one. I think it's important that we hear what the top 3 sites were. And it's not like it's going in a corner somewhere far in one city or in, displaced in Covington as well. If it's reasonable, Ethan, could you just list the top 3? I mean, even the top 2, but
sure, yeah.
Recommended sites.
Yeah, the top site was listed as the town center site in Covington. The second site was a site in Maple Valley next to their high school. And then the third site was located in the Lake Point area in Covington.
Okay, thank you. I think it's important to have that clarity. It didn't, I felt a little pushback just when discussing this. So I think it's just important that we know, and even you know, site number 2 is it's pretty central to both of us or to our cities. But furthermore, exploring the option of what Jennifer asked, I think is really important. And I don't know that we can make one decision without making the other, but we can certainly try and establish whether, you know, we care so much about the location today. But that was my only clarification. Thank you.
Go to Regan next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to add on to Christina's comment there. And just by way of reminder, we did already pay for a professional site analysis to be done. It was extensive. And we put together a working group between residents and council members in Covington and Maple Valley, and they selected these sites and ranked them. And so so much work has been done here. And I think it was brought up by Maple Valley, well, maybe we do a different siting analysis. And Ethan posed the good question, which is also in the blue sheet. What additional information would we need to know that wasn't already analyzed? And so I think just that's an important reminder to keep in place, the work that already went into place to determine these sites.
Thanks, Regan. Beth?
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why it was brought up is because there was a potential for one of those sites to actually maybe do a private partnership, and that wasn't part of the study because the situation may have changed, and that may not ever come to fruition. But the question is, if something changes with the ownership of one of those 3 sites, would that potentially change the outcome of what would be the most viable position, especially if there was a private-public partnership as far as the land was concerned? And that's why I think they brought that up, and I think it might be worth it to at least keep that in the back of our mind as we move forward, because it could, you know, if it's not going to happen for 4 more years, what could the cities look like? What could this region look like? I mean, if we were doing it tomorrow, it might be easier to make that call. But anyway, that's just food for thought.
So the question at hand tonight is going off of the extensive feasibility study that was done and vetted by the feasibility steering committee. And you bring a good, yes, Ethan.
I was just going to share a little bit because it's been brought up a couple of times that, you know, it could be a number of years before it gets built, and that's true, but we don't have to do things to move forward with doing almost every other activity to lead up to building it. We need to choose a site. So I just wanted to make that point, that we can't really put off that unless we want to put off all the activities, and we have funding in place to do that. So
anybody else? So before us, and Beth, you bring up a good point about a private-public partnership that's also for location number 3. So, but right now, going off of the steering committees and the extensive study that was done and presented to the steering committee, and that the steering committee, which consisted of both Maple Valley and Covington, outside resident, and even a resident of Black Diamond, that is the council supportive of what will be determined to be the best location for the entire service area, regardless of it being located in one city or the other, based off of the current feasibility study. So is council supportive of that decision right now? Mark, is a thumbs up, or do we need to do a vote?
There's no formal motion that's required here. This is just giving general
Thumbs
direction
up.
at this point.
Okay, so thumbs up.
My thumb is up.
Okay, so I have 6 thumbs up. Okay, so we have 6 that council is supportive of moving forward on this. And if both cities are open to siting the facility, number 2 is if both cities are open to siting the facility in the best location. Is council supportive of the site recommended in the feasibility study? So right now, recommendation is the town center. Is council supportive of that? Thumbs up. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Jared?
Yep, thumbs up.
Okay. So that's 6 thumbs up. And then is council supportive? A number of tasks would need to be completed prior to the formation of an MPD, including a ballot measure. But to start planning these tasks, it is necessary to know if the council is supportive of working towards an MPD to fund a new aquatic and recreation center. Is council supportive of this? Thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Okay, so we have 6 thumbs up for that as well. Ethan, do you need anything else from us tonight?
No.
Okay, thank you all very much. Ethan, thank you for bringing this forward to us. And council, thank you all for a good discussion on this. And we look forward to this as it moves forward and seeing where this may go. So thank you. Next is new business item number 2, authorize the city manager to execute a street lighting order, Schedule 51 with Puget Sound Energy regarding the SR 516 Jenkins Creek to 185th Place Southeast project. Don.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before you is a request to authorize the city manager to enter into an agreement to purchase streetlights for the project 1127. And I just wanted to make sure that when we were talking about the funding and using traffic impact fees, there was an amount that we had given council for what we could use. So when I was working with Lindsay to get that number to you guys, we took into account that we needed to have this money set aside. That's the reason why we didn't want to utilize all of those funds. So that was taken into account when we had making that decision. So we do have the funds, traffic impact fees set aside to cover this. Yes, the grant fees can pay for that as well. So it might be just a matter of, you know, what costs come in first, but we would have that to backfill those as needed, you know, to fully fund the project as we showed in the blue sheet for the overall project. So I just wanted to make sure that that was understood in that. Also, that there'll be, there are 14 of those. They're 40-foot galvanized poles. They are, will be black. And that is in discussions with the landscape architect that we had, and just had her evaluate all those pieces with that whole art portion that she brought forward. So, so that's all consistent with that. So, so that's all I have. Just happy to answer any questions, but just wanted to make sure that that was clear and understood.
Thank you, Don. Does council have any questions? Joe.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Been moved by Joe and seconded by Beth to authorize the city manager to execute a street lighting order with Puget Sound Energy to install street lights for the SR 516 Jenkins Creek to 185th Place Southeast project, CIP 1127, and authorize the city manager to take further action as may be necessary to successfully complete the project within existing spending authority. Joe, would you like to speak to your motion?
Can't have good roads without good lights, so let's get this going.
Thank you, Joe. Beth, would you like to speak to your second?
No, nope, said it all.
Thank you, Beth. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against the motion? Right, it's been moved and seconded to authorize the city manager to execute a street lighting order with Puget Sound Energy to install street lights for the SR 516 Jenkins Creek to 185th Place Southeast project, known as CIP 1127, and authorize the city manager to take further action as may be necessary to successfully complete the project within existing spending authority. Call for a roll call vote. Jared, how do you vote?
Aye.
Sean, how do you vote?
Aye.
Christina, how do you vote?
Aye.
Jennifer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Joe, how do you vote?
Aye.
Beth, how do you vote?
Aye.
I also vote aye. It is unanimous to pass this. Thank you all very much. That takes us to our future agenda items. And with that, does council have anything that they would like at a future agenda item? And please note that this will be Jared's last meeting on the next meeting in April. So with that, let's move into council staff comments. And we will start with our interim chief, Adam Easterberg. Welcome, Adam.
Hey, thank you, Mayor. We are interviewing for a couple of our positions. We have some people that are transferring out, but we're doing interviews Thursday for those positions. We expect to be losing 2, but we'll be able to gain them right back in a pretty quick swap. I have nothing to add about the Euphorium robbery other than what's already been reported on. I don't know if the council has any questions, but I'm happy to take those if you have those, but that's about all I have.
Thank you. Does council have any questions for Adam? Adam, thank you, and please pass on to your entire team. Thank you for being out there, the front, and risking their lives and to take care of everybody here in Covington. And I know it doesn't get said enough, but thank you. It's very much appreciated what each and every one of you do. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Next is, Beth.
Just a quick question. Were there any repercussions for the security officer?
I don't, the investigation is not done yet, so
Okay,
I can't say.
fair.
But based on initial things, it's not likely. There's a couple law questions that need to be looked at. But as for anything really serious, I doubt it. But I just can't say because I don't know. They haven't finished what they're doing yet.
Sure, that's fair. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Okay, Ethan.
Hi again, Council Mayor. I do want to share that we are holding an open house virtually through Zoom tomorrow night at 6 o'clock to share with the public the final master plan for SoCo Park. And there'll also be some live poll questions during that open house on preferences on the characteristics of park elements that would be in future phases like phase 2 and whatnot. The open house will be followed by a survey that we'll be holding for 2 weeks, and that survey will also ask the same questions that we'll be asking during the live polling during the open house. So if people don't have the opportunity to attend the open house, they will have the opportunity to fill out the online survey with the same questions. And information for both of those items are available on the project webpage on the city's website. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Any questions for Ethan? Ethan, thank you for bringing the Aquatic and Recreation Center update tonight. Really appreciate that. Keep that ball rolling on that. Thank you. Don.
Nothing further tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Selena.
I'm here. Good evening, all. I have nothing for you tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Selena. Casey.
I was just going to mention we've had 3 additional small business grant applications come in, and about $45,000 out of the $150,000 allocated so far. We're just waiting to gather some additional information for the folks, and we'll be getting those contracts out. That's it.
Thank you, Casey. Regan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to let the council know about a really cool opportunity that Chris and I had to go up to Kentwood High School to their marketing class and judge some marketing presentations they put together. I know I put it in the update, but it didn't really capture everything. There were 4 teams, and the exciting part about it is just how much those youth loved Covington and wanted to be involved, and how much they knew about Covington, and just some really great presentations they put together. We got their material and we'll be implementing some of the things that they came up with, which were really great ideas. And so really excited about that. And also another thing that's really exciting, as council knows, we've been running fairly short-staffed for a while, but we're starting to build that up. And this week we welcomed Jennifer Leeden, who's our clean team member, and she is on fire and doing awesome. So it's really exciting to see that. We also hired Jonathan Seda. He's our new parks project manager. So excited for that. And then we have our construction inspector starting next week. So it's exciting, and staff's breathing a sigh of relief with some of these positions coming online. So thank you for your support, council.
Thank you, Regan. And please welcome each of them for all of us to the city. Thank you. Mark.
There's no executive session tonight, and I have nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Krista.
Yes, I'm excited to announce that starting next week, we will have a painting project going on in City Hall, approved by decision card. All of the City Hall offices and common areas and meeting spaces will be painted to kind of brighten it up. So we will, hopefully by the time we get back to meeting in person for council meetings, we will have a fully refreshed council chambers. So I'm excited about that. That's all I have for tonight.
Thanks, Krista.
If I can just add to that, we asked around the office and we couldn't find the last time that the City Hall inside was painted. There's been touch-ups and things done, but I think this is like original colors and painting that's been in there for a while. So this is exciting.
At least that's the same colors I've seen since I've been on council. I haven't seen anything different. That is exciting. I'm going to mix it up again. We'll start with Sean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just say I appreciated the Youth Council presentation today. Sounds like they got some really good ideas. I think we should make sure we capture those and see which ones we can act on. Because I definitely heard them say, you know, a place where they're more engaged is safer and they're less likely to get in trouble. So anyway, thanks everyone.
Thanks, Sean. Jennifer.
I have a few things. One, I'm super excited to be moving forward with the pool. I was checking my notes and it was 2016 that when I was chair of PREPAC, that PREPAC made the recommendation to have an MPD for a pool, which at that point was priced at about 50 million. So heads up, this is super exciting news. Planting seeds, as Jeff is always saying, these have been laying dormant, it feels like. I know they haven't, but I'm pretty excited about that. Also, I wanted to give some kudos to the folks in the Parks and Rec department. I stopped in there to say hi to Pat when I was donating blood the other day, and was really impressed with all of the programs and activities that are available this summer. The team has outdone themselves. Pat was telling me that apparently we received 3 grants to pull all of this off. And if you haven't had a chance to look at the mailer of summer activities, definitely do. You can fill up your calendar. It's really, really exciting to see everything that's going on. Also, I wanted to find out with council member Kogel's last meeting coming up, if Regan or Mark could walk us through the process. I know some of us have been through it before personally and as council members, but it's still, even having gone through it, I would think it would be helpful for us to have a refresher as to what the future appointment process looks like for us.
I think that's on our next agenda.
To discuss it?
Yes.
Okay. Would it be okay to just give us a rundown now?
Yeah, and it's a weird system, so I'm gonna let Mark discuss it.
Yeah, and just like not a lot of detail if we're discussing it at the next meeting, but I would
before I jump in, I'm going to need to take a minute and pull that up. So if you could come back to me, I want to make sure I'm giving you accurate information and not speaking off the top.
Yeah, no problem. And then my last question was about the flag policy. So we have a policy about flying existing flags at half-mast, but we don't have a policy about flying other flags or any flags, from what I understood, right? Am I understanding what?
Yeah, well, technically you're right. We are working on a policy per council's direction. And this is the first time we've been asked by someone to lower the flag to half-mast. That's not a request we've received before. So our practice has always been to follow the governor's proclamations and also the president of the United States when he orders it, we do it.
So this was the first, not policy, because I heard you say
we don't
policy earlier.
We don't have a written policy. We have just the practice that we've been doing, and that was the same for which flags to fly. So I did talk with Mark, and he's going to include that as well about when those can be lowered and the authority granted.
Yeah, I think we need to be really careful here, because I just saw a choice made valuing one request over another, which could be taken really poorly. And I would have really encouraged us to move promptly on a flag policy.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
Mark, are you ready? That was my last question. Thank you.
Yes. So to jump into the process for filling a vacancy, as Regan alluded, it's a little cumbersome, but essentially council accepts the resignation by a majority vote. Staff advertises the council vacancy and notice of vacancy on a variety of different places. Applications of interest, letters of interest will be accepted through a certain date. At a special meeting, council will have the opportunity to interview the applicants. And during the subsequent regular council meeting, council will have the opportunity to discuss the qualifications of the applicants in executive session, then make an appointment to council number 3 if so desired. And if necessary, council may modify the process during the special or regular meeting on May 24th to accommodate timing or other issues. So the interview process is also, it's set out in council rules. It's determined by drawing names. All applicants are interviewed in a panel. Each candidate will be allowed 2 minutes for closing comments. It's not a campaign, so comments and responses about other applicants will not be allowed. And deliberation and selection follows a very specific mechanical process that's laid out that will be laid out in the blue sheet for the next at the next council meeting. Is there anything else you wanted to go over with?
No,
this?
I think that's good. I really appreciate the rundown, because it is a lot, and so that helps me just in my brain plan for what's ahead. We'll miss you.
And just to be clear, so this is a helpful. The person who is appointed to council position number 3 will take office immediately upon appointment and serve the remainder of the unexpired term until the next municipal election in November of 2023. And the council member, whoever that person is, whether it's the person who's appointed that run and someone else, will then have the opportunity to retain that seat, or someone else will fill it. And that's a very complicated mechanical process in and of itself, depending on which year of a term that a council member is no longer in their seat. And it jumps around based upon first and third, because the first and third year of a term, because the council member elections only happen every other year. So it all depends on filing deadlines and when the person resigns. So it's a little complicated, but in this case, the person who is selected will fill the unexpired term and up till the election in November of 2023.
Okay.
But we also have the right, and what we've done in the past as a council is we've checked the qualifications of those we wish to interview prior to interviewing. And that's what we did.
Council is under no obligation to interview every person who submits a letter of interest.
Correct. Thank you, Mark.
Awesome. Thank you.
Beth.
Gosh, so much has been going on lately. But thank you for the discussion this evening about the feasibility study in the Aquatic Center. And looking forward to summer activities and Covington Days Parade and all the fun things that we'll be able to do this summer as a community that we haven't been able to do for a while.
Thank you, Beth. Jared.
Yeah, I don't mean to make things complicated, sorry, but I'm excited. I finally graduated with my bachelor's degree. That felt like it took forever. But 4 years, shoot, I've only almost been in the military for 8 years. So that makes me feel old. But nothing else. I'm just, every day that goes by until my last, I'm just extremely grateful to be, have learned so much from council, from the staff, and growing as a person and getting used to speaking more publicly and not stuttering. So I really appreciate everything. So thank you.
Thank you, Jared. Christina.
Yes, happy spring officially. I think today was a beautiful day and nice welcome. Not that it's the first day of spring, but happy spring, everyone. Yeah, like Sean said, what a great youth council we have. I mean, truly, I just kind of want to hang out with them and do all of those things that they suggested. And what great suggestions. The motive behind the well thought out processes were just, it was so great. They just want to be better. They want to do more. They want to meet more and become better people while serving. On a side note, this Saturday at the Covington Community Park, Valor, which both my sons play for, will be having a Ukrainian supply drive from 10 to 2. I just found this out. I will be there probably for it's a Sunday, I believe. So from 10 to 2, if you can come, amazing. There's a list of supplies. Should you choose, I could provide that. But just thank you again to everyone for incredible support. These have been some kind of weeks, but we're plugging along, and truly staying together is so key all around the world. But I'm always honored to have an amazing council, and I don't just call you council members, I actually think you're all my friends. So I appreciate each one of you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Joe.
Thank you. So I did speak with Angela about the questions we had about 1590 funds, and she and I both agreed it's a longer conversation that needs to occur than what we had at the moment to discuss it. She sent me some dates and times today for when we could meet. So I have to look at my schedule still and make a plan to when I can get together with her for coffee and discuss, but I should have information for everyone by our next council meeting on the 12th. If sooner, I'll send an email to Krista to disperse amongst everybody. Other than that, spring's here. Let's enjoy it. Let's get outside. Let's enjoy our parks. Let's go on the trails and reintroduce ourselves to our residents and have some fun while we're doing it.
Thank you, Joe. Just a couple updates. I agree that was a great joint session with our youth council. I mean, the energy and the leadership that they have to help our community move forward is just outstanding. I'm just really looking forward to what they're going to bring forward to us. Thursday, I have the PSRC meeting where we will be discussing the Moving Ahead Washington transportation package and where some of those dollars are going to be going and for the projects. Then Thursday night, Beth and I believe Regan are going to be attending 2 HOA meetings, Maple Hills and Cornerstone Pond HOAs that night, or I know Beth's going to be at Maple Hills, and to give updates on where the city's at. Then next week I have SCA finance meeting And then I believe that's everything. And so with that, let's move into our second public comment period. Speakers will state their name, address, and organization. Comments are directed to the City Council, not the audience or staff. Comments are not intended for conversation or debate and are limited to no more than 4 minutes per speaker. Is there anybody in the audience wishing to address council tonight? Darren.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, members of council, city staff. My name is Darren Groth. I live at 20415 Southeast 258th Place in Covington, and within that Maple Hills community at the end of 204th. I serve on the Maple Hills HOA board, and we are holding a virtual meeting on Thursday at 5:30. So I just want to say thanks for all the help Krista has done getting this meeting out to the city representatives and helping you guys attend. So as Mayor Wagner mentioned, thanks to him and Councilmember Porter and City Manager Boley, we heard you're all able to attend, and just want to say on behalf of Maple Hills, thank you. Look forward to having a good meeting. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Darren. Laura.
Hi there, I'm Laura Morrissey, and I am back as a Covington resident this time and not as the Parks Commission chair. And I just wanted to affirm and thank you for your support of the pool and the community center project that's going forward. I know it's tricky to cite something like this when you have two cities working together, both of who would probably prefer to have it in their own city, both of whose residents would probably prefer to have it in their own city. And I know that the three recommendations are spread out pretty evenly. You've got one in the center of one city, one in the center of another city, and one kind of in between. And I have not been privy to any discussions beyond the steering committee, but I do know that the one in between just kind of mentally is sort of a nice, even though it's located within Covington, it's like right in between the two cities. And politically, that might be easier to swallow. I'm sure that those who are working on this have thought about that already, but I just wanted to share that as a thought. And just again, thank you for this, for continuing to push forward this asset that we all know we need here. It's been a long time, like you said, in coming, Jennifer, and hopefully it won't be a longer time in coming. I know there are many, many steps. So thank you for your support and for the work and the enthusiasm that you guys are bringing to it as it kind of rolls out of our hands in the community and into staff and council hands. Thank you for carrying the ball forward.
Thank you, Laura. Is there anybody else in the audience wishing to address council this evening? One more, seeing nobody else, that concludes our public comment period. One other thing I forgot to mention is next Wednesday on the 30th is SCA's first in-person network dinner. I know Beth and I are both signed up to attend. Dow Constantine will be our speaker. If you're interested, I know there's still space available. Just work with Kristen. She can get you signed up if you're interested in attending. And that will be in Renton at the Renton Pavilion. Yes, Regan.
Isn't that tomorrow, not next Wednesday?
No, it's next. It's the 30th.
Oh. And I think I'm going as well.
Don't frighten people, Regan. Don't frighten them.
It's on my calendar for tomorrow. So
well, you're going to be there early.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll be there early. Okay, good. Thanks.
Don't make the drive out there with the price of gas.
Yeah, seriously.
All right. Seeing no executive session, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much for a great meeting tonight. And it's adjourned at 8:53 p.m. Thank you and have a great evening. Good night.